The Hector is a Tier 8 premium Commonwealth light cruiser and the reward for the ongoing September 2025 campaign. Notice I say Commonwealth cruiser and not anything else because according to the lore on this ship in the Overview tab, this is a ship that the British could have designed in 1936 if they wanted to make a full-sized AA cruiser based on a Belfast hull instead of making the Fiji class. But they didn't actually design this ship, they designed the Fiji instead. Now, the lore fails to say that if the British had designed this ship, who might they have given it to? The Australians? The Canadians? It's unclear. We have no idea. I'm going to assume it's an Australian ship, though, for no reason in particular. I'll show you my commander build on the screen right now. It's the Commonwealth Cruiser Commander Harold B. Farncombe, who I believe debuted in the game alongside the Brisbane a few updates ago. Maybe last year, I don't remember when the Brisbane was released. His skills affect smoke screens a lot, and that's good because of course we are equipped with a smoke screen. And the build is going to be affecting the specs that I read out to you. Now, if you're wondering whether the Hector is a good and effective ship, I'll just invite you to pay attention to the following sequence here as we come around this corner. We're going to come up against a Catalunya, which we covered yesterday, very good ship, and two enemy battleships. And they're going to be pushing down this flank, which is not going to be good for them due to the Hector's suite of weaponry here. But before we get into the weapons, as we launch the torpedoes at the Catalunya and the approaching battleships, we'll briefly cover the consumables. We're using one of them now, the trademark Commonwealth smokescreen. This is what's known as a crawling smoke. If you go at quarter throttle, the smokescreen follows you. If you go faster than quarter throttle, you'll outrun the smokescreen, which can be useful if you need to reacquire spotting or reposition quickly. And then, of course, you can slow down and let the smokescreen re-envelop you, and then only go at that quarter throttle. The thing lasts for 93.6 seconds with this build. I think the duration time is buffed a little bit by Farncombe. And then the reload time is fairly long at 156.8 seconds. So a lot of the battle, after you've used the smoke screen, you are going to be without it. And that, of course, necessitates good positioning because this thing is not the most survivable cruiser in the world. It's only got 34,400 HP. And like you would expect with British-designed light cruisers, the armor is pretty much non-existent. We've got 16mm plating on both the bow and stern. That can be overmatched by pretty much every single battleship you'll encounter, as well as some heavy cruisers. And then the Citadel, well, it's not the stupid step design Citadel that's unique to a lot of the British light cruisers, the one that looks like a platform that the winners of some sort of Olympic Games would stand on. It's not that. It's a flat Citadel, but it does extend pretty far above the waterline, and it goes from the very front turret to the very back one, which this thing is loaded with guns. It's practically bristling with them. And before we get to the guns, which you can see are having great effect on these battleships, the thing also has sonar with a ship acquisition range of 4.9, so not the longest in the world, lasts for 100 seconds. And then it's got an improved repair party. I suppose you could call it a super heal. It restores 687 HP per second for a duration of 20 seconds. And that's roughly enough to restore 3, maybe 4 bars of HP, provided you don't take super critical damage like Citadels, and instead you just get pen damage or light damage like HE pens, fires, etc. It is very good for restoring HP. I assume it probably does restore some Citadel damage, though. I don't actually have the numbers to confirm that. The updated specs page doesn't include any information about the consumables, so we don't really know. But we do know the thing has 14 133mm guns, a peculiar gun size for a light cruiser. They are destroyer-sized guns, you could say, and I think the only other cruiser that I can think of that has the same size guns is the relatively new Dido at Tier 5. These guns range out to 15.3 kilometers, pretty short, but I doubt you really want to build into that range because, as you might have noticed, the shell arcs are pretty floaty. So if you're aiming them downrange at a far distance, The target has plenty of time to move out of the way from the shells before they actually make contact. The turrets themselves turn pretty quickly at 10.8 or 10.6 seconds. The reload time with the reload module and whatever else on the commander build might be affecting the reload is 5.6 seconds, although the base is 6.7. Kind of slow, less than what you would expect on a cruiser of this nature. The HE shell damage is 1900, 13% fire chance, and being small 133mm guns, the HE only pens 22mm of armor, which is not enough to pen most of the armor surfaces on battleships and cruisers, but is certainly good enough for destroyers, including the one hiding in this smoke screen that's brave enough to get my attention by shooting at me. He's gonna live for long enough to regret doing that as we approach his smoke screen and go dark. We also have AP, of course. I should not neglect to mention that. The AP shell damage is 2,550. It's got only 298 millimeters of armor plating, or penetration, rather. Armor plating, I don't even know what I'm saying. 298 millimeters of armor penetration at point blank range. Doesn't look like there's anything improved about the penetration angles. And the arming threshold is 22 millimeters. Of course, you don't really need to be using the AP against enemy destroyers. The HE is more than enough. And again, these are 14 guns. The turret setup is pretty weird. It's got 4 turrets right on the front, and if you're facing straight forward, you can actually fire all 4 of them straight forward. And even at most angles, all 4 of them will get on target, despite 2 of them being sort of right next to each other. We've already seen the torpedoes in action as well. Like the guns, this thing is positively bristling with torpedoes. We've got 4x4 torpedo launchers, so 12 in total, 8 on each side of the ship, and being a cruiser of British origins, it's able to single fire the torpedoes if you so choose. Otherwise, you get a typical sort of narrow spread, which I think we've been using this entire time. The torpedoes have a pretty excellent range of 12 km, not quite as good as the other Commonwealth cruiser, Brisbane, which I think has 13.5. The speed is not so impressive at 62 knots. Reload time, though, is relatively quick at 96 seconds, and the torpedoes hit for 15,753 damage at maximum. They have a 1.3 kilometer detectability by sea, so they are fairly sneaky, and I suppose they could creep up on you before smacking you in the face, as they did some of our enemies here. The AA defenses, well, maybe they're good. It does have long-range AA that extends up to 5.8 kilometers, so that's pretty nice. But, well, there's not a lot of carriers that you'll find at Legendary Tier these days, and I usually find myself up-tiered in Legendary Tier when playing at Tier 8. This time, though, I guess we get lucky, and there's a bunch of Tier 7s and no CV present. The maneuverability, we've got a top speed of 35.4 knots. I'm not sure exactly what's buffing that. That's better than base. I might be running the battle booster flag. The turning circle is 760 meters, and the rudder shift is 3.4 seconds. And then finally, the concealment with the concealment module and Makawa as one inspiration is 9 kilometers, which is pretty much excellent. So this is a British light cruiser with a Commonwealth smoke. I think it allows for possibilities like this, where you can sort of maneuver around in the smoke screen and safely farm ships from a relatively, advantageous concealed position. And then when you're out of it, of course, you can play it behind islands and the like. I think what ultimately you want to do is find a flank where the enemy team is pushing into it, and then launch torpedoes at the flank and farm them as they push in. That's where you'll find the thing is the most effective, but that's pretty much true of every light cruiser. And I think in approximately 4 weeks, when everybody finishes the campaign and this thing proliferates across the seas, probably people will get the impression that it's not a very good ship, because they're going to see it blowing up all the time. I predict that that is going to happen. Get back to me in 4 weeks once we see all the Hectors out there blowing up and tell me if I was wrong. But regardless of its ability to be dev-struck, it is an excellent ship, in my opinion. It's a very good, very capable light cruiser with a tremendous amount of firepower from both the guns and the torpedoes. And it's just really fun to play. I've been enjoying it a lot. I have seen some questions, though, because after all, the Brisbane was a campaign ship that still exists. And upon debut, the Brisbane was equipped with sonar, a heel, and radar. It didn't have the crawling smoke that the Hector has, at least not at first, but that was subsequently changed and the crawling smoke was added. So I have seen some questions about why would you want to get the Hector and play it if you have the Brisbane. Both of them are light cruisers with this crawling smoke, and both of them are armed with a tremendous amount of torpedoes as well. So they can kind of perform similar roles, and to that I would say yes. However, there is one crucial difference. You don't have the option to take the radar consumable on the Hector. You've only got the sonar, the smoke, and the heel. Whereas with the Brisbane, you have to choose between the radar and the heel, or the radar and the smoke, rather. And I feel like having to make that choice between the radar and the smoke, you always want to go with the radar, because that's the Chad option, right? If you neglect to go with the radar on the Brisbane and instead you go with the smoke, you feel a little bit bad about yourself for not being a Chad, not being brave enough to take the radar in the highly vulnerable light cruiser. And plus, the radar has like a 12-kilometer range on the Brisbane, I think, so it's very good. And you basically, I think you want to take it. Whereas on the Hector, well, you don't have to make that choice. You just get the smoke screen by default and you can't change it to anything else. So it feels much better to take out the smoke screen on the Hector than it does the Brisbane. That's why you would want to get the Hector even if you have the Brisbane, in my opinion. Now, of course, if you push it up to an island 5 kilometers away from a couple of battleships, you'll probably sink, although we did get a chance to see how much HP the repair party could restore thanks to that Wisconsin there, so, thank you for that. And then this Monarch, I think, is the last ship left alive. Our torpedoes ultimately made contact with the Wisconsin, got us the, it's just a flesh wound medal, to go along with the high caliber, and 177,000 damage done with 6 torpedo hits, 304 main battery shell hits, and 9 fires. So as you can see, it's a potent, damage-dealing light cruiser that offers the same sort of playstyle you would expect from the crawling smoke, which is pretty good. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. And I certainly think getting the Admiralty backing and completing the campaign is going to be worth it. Even if you do have the Brisbane, this is a fun ship to play. Just deals a lot of damage and is very effective. I've had nothing but fun with it, and also really good results like this. This is not the only high damage game I got. I just think it was the one that probably shows off the ship in the best light you could get. If you do want to get a lot of damage, the reload time on these guns, as we mentioned earlier, is fairly slow, even when you do build for it. It's 5.6 seconds. If you compare that to the Brisbane, for example, well, it's got 3.7. So there's a bit of a drop-off in DPM there. But the torpedoes, if you can use them in conjunction with the guns, which I think the smoke screen makes easier to do, well, then you can be quite effective with this thing. And it's an easy recommendation for me. This ship agreed with me as soon as I played it. I had no expectations for it, but I'm pleased that it is an effective light cruiser. And I don't think it's overpowered or anything like that, but it is fairly strong. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.